Anyway, thank you all for coming. You'll have to bear with me. I'll get a little teary-eyed. To help celebrate a very remarkable man. Michael and I were married for over 61 years. The first 20 years of our life together, we were spent in the military, moving from place to place. During these years in the armed forces, he earned the equivalent of 3 master's degrees. One in aeronautical systems engineering, one in political science, and one in business administration. He also had his pilot's license. His father called him the Renaissance man because he seemed to have so many strings to his bow. Before choosing to leave the military, Mike had risen to the rank of lieutenant colonel. Had he stayed in, he probably would have risen higher. But he chose to leave the military because he wanted our family to have a more stable life. Not only that, his parents were aging, and we wanted to be near them. And they lived in North Vancouver, so that's where he went. We went to North Vancouver, and he started on a new career. He became a legal administrator. And while he was a legal administrator, he he taught himself how to program. He didn't go to school for that. He taught himself how to program. He programmed a law package that was used, and maybe still is today, in some of the law firms. And he looked after their computers and stuff like that. He also, before he left the military, he was the commandant of the navigation school. So he also was in charge of 600 people in the 1976 Olympics in Montreal. And so he was, and he spoke French also. So, like I said, he also could play he played classical music on the piano, and he wrote poetry. When he came to North Van, of course, like I said, he became a legal administrator. And that was they did that for a number of years, and then he decided to open up his own consulting business, which he ran for a number of years. After that, he decided that we wanted some animals, and the reason we ended up with animals is because we used to take our dogs on the power line cut in North Vancouver. And on the way down one day, Mike's brother saw somebody hitting a raccoon, and he stopped, and here we had Great Danes in the back and a golden retriever, and he went out and he yelled at the people for hitting the raccoon, but he picked up the raccoon and threw it on my lap. Now, thank God the dogs didn't do anything. They just sort of, so Dr. Lake, who had later on became the health minister, we phoned him, and he was in a black tie dinner, and he phoned back and told us that the raccoon probably just had radial nerve damage and that he would recover, which he did. And when he recovered, the raccoon was let go. Well, about meantime, we had called the lady called Gail Martin, who now runs Critter Care in Langley, and she's become a friend through the years. And she came over and she checked out the raccoon, and she says, we figured she'd take the raccoon because she had the license to look after raccoons. But she looked at the raccoon and she said, oh yeah, you're doing a good job, and left. And there we were with the raccoon, you know. So this one was released, but then she brought us other raccoons because we were successful in rehabilitating this raccoon. So what we did, we had a back deck, and Mike enclosed it all with wire and things like that, and so we ended up with Tessa and Tara, and there were a couple of other ones that we had. Well, little tykes, as they grew bigger, even though we had a double door built when we fed them and stuff like that, if Mike brought in water, they would hold the door open for him and then let it snap shut again. But one morning we woke up and we had a mountain ash growing up, and so we were in the bedroom upstairs, and there were the little raccoons in the mountain ash. And we were going, oh my God, how did they get out? They had gone and jumped on the wire and pulled it down until they got out. So here, Mike, I'm running and I'm waking up Chris, and I say, hey, the raccoons are out. So he comes down, And Mike and I then dashed out, and Mike stood under the tree, and he caught them. And anyway, so as time and a half went by, we decided maybe we love this animal thing. Why don't we go out and see if we can find a place, bigger place? So we moved to Mission, and we found a place up on a green hill on Greenwood. Vince would remember that, and there was 5 acres there, and we didn't at that point have any horses, but we ended up with ducks, because we found a little duckling had been abandoned by its mother, and so we said, well, this little duckling needs companionship. So we went and got a couple of other ducks, but they grew much bigger than this little duck. But the little duckling, in the long run, didn't survive, which was a pity. But we called him Dax. He was a nice little duck. So then we moved, and we decided, because Mike didn't like the hill in the winter, it was very slippery, and our motorhome slid one time down, and it just stopped short of going down the hill. It was stopped by a rock, thank God. So, well, we had the dogs, and at that point, and so Mike decided he didn't want to live up there anymore. And then Chris came back to live with us again, and he brought a couple of more Great Danes. So we had 4 Great Danes and a Golden Retriever. So we then rented a place out on Farrington, and I was looking after Tanya's dog while she was away. And while I was away, he had arranged to bring a couple of horses to the place. And he said, the white one is for you, Vera, because you always dreamt you would have a white horse. Well, and Chris fell in love with the other one, because Chris was on crutches at that point, and the horse had come up to him, and so there's a big love affair there. So that's how we started, and then it just seemed to escalate. The bird vet sent us birds. We had. Then I got to know a gentleman that's a professor at UBC who had a rescue in Main Island, and he moved down to the United States, and I contacted him about the how to feed a horse and so forth, because they were older horses. So when he was moving down to the United States to teach at Loyola College there, he wanted to take the alpacas with him, but because at that time he couldn't take them because there was a pig swine flu going around, and if your animals were in contact with the swine flu, you couldn't take them across the border. So first he gave us 4. He thought he could take 2. No, so we ended up with 6 alpacas. Well, that was a mutual decision. Mike and Chris and I had to agree on this, and we thought we said yes, but we thought we were crazy to do so. But they turned out to be wonderful animals, and Michael just loved them. And then the other thing is our bird vet, which couldn't make it today. She came out to see me and had lunch with Curtis and I, and but she wanted to be here. But she works very long hours, and her health isn't the best anymore. So she apologizes that she wasn't here. But she phoned Mike up, and she says, "Is this the home for blind seagulls?" And so Michael said, "Yes." And that seagull was 10 months old when it came to us. Do you know how old it is now? Still living? 21 years old. We still have it. Yeah. And then the next thing was she brought him a swan, and because in Stanley Park, I guess the people were taking the swans and killing them, so they had to remove all the swans. So we had a number of swans that wandered through our lives, but one of the best ones was Theodore. Theodore and Michael struck up a love affair. And when Michael ended up in the hospital, I had to send him to the bird vet for 3 weeks because I couldn't look after him. Caroline came over and helped me a couple of times, and so she was very nice about that, because he didn't like me, the swan, and the reason he didn't like me is that he had been in the flight cage at night, and next door I put a little shoveler duck that I'd also gotten from the bird vet, and when it got cold outside, I had removed the duck and brought it into the house. And so from then on, I was persona non grata. But he loved Mike. So when Mike came back out of the hospital after 3 weeks, the pet taxi brought the swan back. And when she opened the door, that bird flew into Mike's arms. So I have a picture on my cell phone where he's got the swan in his arms, but I wanted to print it, but it didn't get to it. But so that became the other part of our life. So it was the military, the law firm, the animal thing. The animal thing was for quite a long period of time. And we just lost our last alpaca a year before Michael passed. Now, the thing is that we tried to find a home for the alpaca, but nobody had a suitable, somebody didn't have enough pasture, somebody didn't have a suitable place to house him. So we said we just keep him. He was used to being there, but he's a herd animal. So since the internist said to Mike, you need a dog, because that will help you to get out and walk after the heart attack. So we got a dog, and the dog befriended the alpaca, so that made it better. Then we got another dog. Then she had puppies, and the breeder, who was going to be here, but her lady that she looks after, was sick today, so she couldn't come. Plus, she's looking after Mishka's puppies. That was her daughters had 10 puppies, so she's looking after those. So she apologizes profusely, but she adored Mike. But anyway, Mishka, when Mike came out of the hospital, well, she always jumped up on Mike's lap, always. And he was in his chair, she was on Mike's lap. But Cashew here, when was his, I don't know, she was so loyal to him. When he passed away, the paramedics, she would not leave his side. She slept with him all night, all the time. And when the paramedics came, they said to me, remove the dog. And I tried. She would not move. She did not leave his side. Even when they moved him out onto the floor to work on him, she was right there. She didn't block their access to him, but she watched. She was right there. And she is really feeling it right now, because even now, she doesn't really want to go out. Isn't that right, Spencer?
Yeah.
Yeah. She doesn't want to go out. So, and she's very clingy, you know. So, he was a wonderful man, a kind man, and if I can read you, if I can find it again, what Dr. McQuiston, one of the vets, said about him. Just a minute. Messages. Again, McQuiston, he says. Okay. Okay. Yeah. Mike was a truly remarkable man. I always enjoyed our visits and conversations. He had such an insightful perspective on the world, and wonderful intelligence, and a deep love of nature, and was evident in everything he did. Having you and Mike as clients over the years has been one of the real pleasures and highlights of my veterinary career. Although Mike lived a long and full life, that does little to lessen the loss for those who loved him. I know how much you will miss his companionship, wisdom and observations, and unique way of looking at the world. I will miss those things as well. Please accept my sincere condolences, and my thoughts are with you during this difficult time. And that is Dr. McQuiston is a exotic vet. He not only treats cats and dogs, and birds. He also looks after the bears on Grouse Mountain. He looks after the animals at the Vancouver Zoo, and he looks after the bears and other animals at Criticare. He's a very nice man, and we've known him for years and years. So I'll end it with this, and thank you all for for coming. We miss him very much, don't we, Tanya? Yeah. Is there anything you wanted to say, Curtis?
Yeah, I've got a
few things?
few things written down here, but I gotta put my spectacles on because I'm getting old too.
Do you want to use mine? Curtis?
Oh, he's got his own.
Yeah, his own? Okay.
Thanks.
Can you use it, please?
I like these ones.
Okay.
These ones make me look cool. No, not
Hey, what are you saying?
They're just cool looking, right? I got two sets of glasses on.
That's right, yeah.
Looks stupid, doesn't it? Now, for those of you who do not know me, I am Mike and Vera's nephew, the son of Kurt Mangan, which would be Vera's brother, late brother. Unfortunately, we lost Kurt quite a few years ago, and I never really had a good opportunity to get to know him, so I do regret that. My first introduction to Mike Ryan was one of my most memorable times. I was at the age of 14. Uncle Mike had generously invited me to the first experience of flight in a two-seated trainer plane. We took off from the ground at CFB Trenton on the runway on a sunny, beautiful day. Being my first ever flight, I found it very intimidating, but Uncle Mike was as cool a pilot as I had ever seen. His confidence and self-assurance quickly calmed my fears, and before I knew it, he had me at the controls of the plane out over the Bay of Quinte. This is a moment in time that will forever be with me. On landing, the winds had tossed the plane about, and I was certain we were going to wreck. But Uncle Mike took immediate control and corrected the plane. His calm and assuring demeanor had won my trust. Thank you, Uncle Mike, for that adventure. As the years quickly raced by, I would once again be graced by my uncle's generosity and willingness to help a young man find his way.
You're the young man?
I was, believe it or not, I was. And I was a handsome looking dude too, if I might add. He opened his home to me for a time and I lived with him, Aunt Vera and his brother Christopher in North Vancouver. It was then that I experienced his storytelling, his wonderfully dry humor, his struggles to fit into this world, his frustrations, and those things that brought joy to him. He would always find the humor in those things, that would annoy him and would often share at the dinner table. Great memories. He was very self-controlled in the way he conducted himself around others and most willing to give his place to another in need. He was a true gentleman with manners of politeness, care, and compassion for others. The word chivalry comes to mind if I were to describe Mike Ryan. While in North Vancouver, Uncle Mike took me on another memorable adventure, only this time on the open sea of the English Bay in his sailing vessel. The swells in the bay that day were somewhat larger than anticipated, and the bow of the boat would disappear beneath the water at times. Of course, me being the adventurer that I was, I took my place at the furthest point to the bow. At one point, I had disappeared under the water and returned to the surface with a mouthful of seawater. It did make for lots of laughs and conversation at the dinner table.
Thought we'd lost him.
Not only did I trust Uncle Mike's flying skills, but his sailing skills as well. Thank you, Uncle Mike, for yet.
You okay?
Thank you, Uncle Mike, for another memorable adventure. Thanks, dear. Uncle Mike made it possible for me to be married to my beautiful bride on the peak of Grouse Mountain. It was a wedding that most dream of having. Sorry,
It's okay.
it brings back a lot of memories, beautiful memories. As I look back at wedding photos, he has a smile on his face that would outshine others. I believe that it was rewarding to him to be able to create such memories and joy for those that he loved. Thank you, Uncle Mike, for yet another memorable adventure.
No.
Thank you. I think that's it. You don't want to say anything. No.
Does anybody else have a story they'd like to share by chance? No?
I gotta recompose myself on a more serious level. The last time I had serious conversation with Uncle Mike, he was laying in a hospital bed with life-threatening problems, heart problems. I told him that if ever there was a time to call upon the Lord Jesus, now is that time. I believe he did put his trust in Jesus because he did walk out of that hospital and he continued to live. Now, he never shared with me his spiritual standing, but I hold it in my heart that he did call upon his name. For the scriptures declare that there is no other name under heaven given among men by which we must be saved. Romans 10:13, everyone who calls on the name of the Lord will be saved. The scriptures tell us that it is appointed unto man to die once, and then there's a judgment. The judgment is simply one of question: why did you reject my way of salvation? John 14:6 says, Jesus said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father but through me. So simple a task. Simply believe, and thou shalt be saved. Our God has created us to live for eternity. Sin came into the world through one man, and that man was Adam. In the book of Genesis, you'll find the story. Death to the body is separation of soul, spirit from the physical body. Death to the soul is total separation from God. That's the death that we don't want to face. Death to the soul is total separation from God. A place of darkness, hopelessness, and despair. I am confident that Mike is not in that place. Just as condemnation entered through one man, God has provided a means of escape from that condemnation that is ours through one man, Christ Jesus. God longs to bring us home because he loves each and every one of us and wishes that none would perish. But the preaching of the cross to them that are perishing is just foolishness. So how can I escape that condemnation? Simply believe that Jesus Christ was crucified on a cross, raised on the third day, and now lives to intercede for us.
Nice.
I like that. You talked about Jesus.
Okay, let's have some coffee and tea, and I don't think there's tea, but coffee and have some snacky bits.
Tim Hortons.